Hi there, I'm Adrian, and in a previous lesson I've talked about what it is that makes a power chord a power chord. I've shown you a couple of really common ways of playing them on the guitar. What I thought I'd do in this lesson is basically go through all of the other ways I know of that you can play power chords. So let's just start with a brief recap of where we're at so far. I've explained a bit of the theory behind power chords. They're made up of two different notes, the root and the fifth, so that at its most simple you can play a two-note root fifth power chord. It is possible to add in multiple instances of those roots and fifths to create a slightly thicker sound. So you can have three-note power chords, four-note power chords, all the way up to six-note power chords, because you're obviously limited by the number of notes you can play simultaneously on the guitar. Another thing I should point out is that power chords are neither major nor minor. Because they just contain the root and the fifth, they don't contain the third interval, the major or the minor third. They can't really be described as major or minor. And for that reason, they will work in place of major or minor chords if you're using power chords in the course of a song. So let's move on and look at a few more ways that we can play these power chords. One question I'm sometimes asked is, I know about sixth-string root power chords and fifth-string root power chords. What about power chords with their roots on the other strings? Is that possible? And the answer is yes, it is possible. We saw in the previous lesson that we've got our sixth-string root shapes, fifth-string root shapes. We can play power chords with their roots on the fourth string simply by moving our fifth-string power chord shape down to the next string set. The root note is now found on the fourth string. You play that with your first finger. And those power chords are reasonably common. You can move that shape over again to the second and third strings to create a third string root power chord. The important thing to be aware of here is, because of the way the guitar is tuned, the actual finger shape for this third string root power chord is going to be slightly different. The root is going to be on the third string, the fifth is going to be on the second string, but instead of being 2 frets higher than the root note, it's actually going to be 3 frets higher. So in the instance of this chord I'm playing here, I'm playing the root at the 5th fret with my first finger. The fifth is going to be found at the 8th fret, and I can play that with my little finger. So that's a little movable third string root power chord. And then you can go all the way over to the first and second strings, and again, because of the way the guitar is tuned, if we're using the second string as our root, then our finger shape reverts to the original shape, which is first finger on one string, and then the fifth 2 frets higher on the next string. So yes, you can use all of those power chord shapes with the roots on the fourth, third and second strings. As you do go higher and across the strings, then inevitably the power chords are going to lose a little bit of their bass content. They're going to sound a little bit less heavy. So these chords are obviously going to sound less good for those sort of bone crunching rock riffs, but there are certainly some contexts where you might want to use these kind of power chords, though they're far less common than the basic 6th and 5th string root shapes. Another really common approach when it comes to playing power chords is to play them with the fifth as the lowest note. So rather than the more usual arrangement of notes in a power chord where it's root and then a fifth above that, we can play them starting with the fifth and then have the root above that. So in a sense, I suppose we're playing power chord inversions where the order of the notes is flipped over. So let's just look at how that translates to the guitar. You could try playing this little power chord shape. I'm playing the 5th fret on the 5th string with my second finger, and then I'm playing the 5th fret on the 4th string with my third finger. And what we've got here is a power chord where the order of the notes is fifth followed by root. The root note here is found on the 4th string. In this case, it's a G note. The 5th of G, we count up 5 notes, G, A, B, C, D, and then rather than placing that above the root as we've done before, we're going to place the D note below the root at the 5th fret on the 5th string. And there we have an alternative way of playing a G power chord. I suppose one way of looking at this chord would be to see it as part of this bigger 6-string root power chord, our G 3-note G power chord that we looked at in the previous lesson. If you play that chord but then remove the low root note that you're playing with your first finger, you're left with the 5th and then the high root note. So once again, like with the other power chords, this little 2-note shape is a movable shape. The most important thing to remember is now the root note, the note that the chord is named after, is found on the 4th string. So this is a G power chord found at the 5th fret, and that's an F power chord there found at the 3rd fret. So another really good reason why you should know the names of the notes on the neck, so you can actually put names to these chords and be able to use them properly. Now you can take these little 2-note inverted power chord shapes and play them on other string sets as well. So you could play this shape on the 5th and 6th strings. The actual finger shape is the same. We've got two notes on the same fret on adjacent strings. So we've got the 5th and then the root note here on the 5th string. Same thing on the middle 2 strings, the 3rd and 4th strings. When it comes to the 2nd and 3rd strings, again, because of the way the guitar is tuned, the finger shape is slightly different. We've got the 5th on the 3rd string, and then the root note is found on the next string, but this time 1 fret higher. So we've got this kind of shape, which is again is movable. And then we can take it all the way over to the 1st and 2nd strings, and here the finger shape goes back to the initial shape where the 2 notes are on the same fret. So there are again many riffs which use these little 2-note power chord shapes. One of the most famous rock riffs goes something like this. And that riff played exclusively using these little power chord inversion shapes, starting off on the 4th and 5th strings and then moving over onto the 3rd and 4th strings. Another really useful power chord voicing with the 5th in the bass is this one here. And what I'm doing here is I'm playing our basic 5th string root power chord shape that we saw in the previous lesson, and I'm adding in an additional note on the 6th string, and that note is the 5th of the chord. So let me just give you an example. If we play this D power chord with the root on the 5th string, I'm playing the D note there at the 5th fret on the 5th string. We can also play the 5th fret on the 6th string, again with the first finger. You can just use that to bar across those 2 notes. And here we have a particularly sludgy and heavy sounding power chord, and the arrangement of notes within that chord is now 5th, root, another 5th, and then another root up there on the 3rd string. And it's a favourite power chord voicing of mine, this one. They're perfect for kind of doomy metal riffs. Also very common are power chords played using open strings. We could play, for instance, open power chord versions of our basic 6th and 5th string root shapes. We could play this open E power chord, for example. Here the root note is the open low E string, and then I'm playing the 5th, which is found at the 2nd fret on the 5th string. Playing that note with my first finger. Then you've got the option of playing another root note an octave higher at the 2nd fret on the 4th string and adding that into the chord as well. So you have this nice sounding open E power chord. You can play those 2 notes just by flattening your first finger down and barring across both of them, or you could play them with your 2nd and then your 3rd finger together. It doesn't really make too much difference there. So that's our open E power chord. We can move all of those notes over to the next string set and we'd end up with this open A power chord. This time the root note is the open A string, and then I'm also playing the second fret on the fourth string and optionally the second fret on the third string as well. Then why not move those notes over to the next string set as well, and we've got this open D power chord. Here the open D string is the root, playing the fifth here at the second fret on the third string, and then I've got another D note at the third fret on the second string. So all three of those chords are very useful and very widely used. There are some other open string power chords that I can think of that have got a few more notes in them. One way of finding these power chords would be to play your standard major and minor open chords and then take out some of the notes, so you're left with just the roots and the fifths, the power chord elements of the chord. So essentially you'd be removing the sweeter sounding notes, which are going to be the major or the minor thirds. Let me just give you an example of how that would work. If we play this standard open E chord, you can hear it sounds a bit indistinct and sludgy when you play it with a lot of distortion. So let's turn it into a power chord. And the note we don't want is this note here, the G sharp, that we're playing with the first finger at the first fret on the third string. And that's the note which has got the sort of sweet sound to it. So we're going to take that note out of the chord, just take away the first finger. We're also going to need to just mute that third string so it doesn't ring out, and I'm doing that just by leaning into it with the side or the underside of my third finger, and then we have this sort of fantastic sounding open E power chord. And the arrangement of notes in this chord, we've now got the open low E root, then I'm playing the second fret on the fifth string, second fret on the fourth string, that third string there is muted, that's important, and then the top two strings are open. So that's a great sounding open E power chord. You can do a similar thing with a G chord. Rather than play this kind of folky, sweet sounding G, you could play this, which is a G power chord. So we're just removing the B notes from our open G chord. So now we're playing the low G root note at the third fret on the sixth string. We need to mute the fifth string now because that was where that B note was residing. So we've got a muted fifth string. Going to keep the open fourth and third strings. Going to now play an extra D note on the on the second string, the third fret of the second string. So instead of that, what was a B note, we're replacing that with a D note, and we're keeping the note which is at the third fret on the first string. So there we have a very nice sort of open G power chord. Another open power chord that I sometimes use is this one here, a nice sounding C power chord. Again, from the open C major chord, I'm just taking out the E notes, so I'm left with this. I'm playing the third fret on the fifth string. I'm muting the fourth string just by leaning into it with my third finger. Open third string. Still playing the C note at the first fret on the second string. Then I'm just adding in an extra fifth, which is I'm playing with my little finger at the third fret on the top string on the first string, and that gives us again a very nice sounding open C power chord. One fun thing you could try would be playing power chords using a drop D tuning. This is where you tune the lowest string on the guitar from an E down to a D. So it sounds like this. And the big advantage of this, besides having that extra low end weight in your sound, is that you can now play power chords using just one finger. Just bar your finger across the three lowest strings on the guitar and you have your power chord. That's because we've changed the tuning of the guitar. The root note is now on the sixth string, the fifth is at the same fret on the fifth string, and then we've got that octave root note at the same fret on the 4th string. So we can literally just move that one finger shape around to get all of our different power chords. You can either do that by bowing your first finger, you could possibly use your second and third fingers on occasion as well. And again, this is a very widely used tuning. A lot of metal bands use drop D tuning. A lot of kind of grunge bands as well made it quite popular. People like Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. I think Nirvana used drop D to a lesser extent. I think there are 2 or 3 songs that I can think of that they used drop D tuning on as well. But lots of great riffs using this tuning. Again, first thing that pops into my head would be this. Again, just using those one finger power chords in conjunction with a few single notes as well. So as you should be starting to see, there are lots of possibilities when it comes to playing power chords on the guitar, some of which go well beyond the standard, most commonly used chord shapes. I think the important thing to be aware of is the location of those root and 5th notes. Really be able to visualize where they fall on the neck, and then you should start to be able to see your own combinations of these notes and start to be able to come up with your own chord shapes. I want to finish just by showing you a couple of my favourite less common power chord shapes. I think I stole these chord shapes from Eric Johnson, just listening to him play and watching him play. He seems to use them quite a lot. And what he would do, for instance, instead of playing a standard 6-string root power chord like this, he would play exactly the same notes but refinger them and put a couple of the notes on different strings and come up with this. And as you can hear, the difference between the two chords is subtle, but it's definitely noticeable. So it's exactly the same notes, but I think this new Eric Johnson style voicing just has a bit more clarity, a bit more openness. There's something tonally very nice about this chord voicing, and I find myself using it quite a lot. So what's going on here is we're still playing the same 6-string root note, but instead of playing it with the first finger, we're going to refinger it, play it with our little finger. Then we're going to skip the next string, the 5th string, and instead of playing the 5th on the 5th string, we're going to place it right here at the 2nd fret on the 4th string. Just play that note with your first finger, and then we're going to play another A note an octave higher at the 2nd fret on the 3rd string. Again, just playing that with the first finger, barring the first finger across 2 notes. And we have this fantastic sounding chord. You can strum this chord if you want to. Just got to be careful just to mute that 5th string by leaning into it with your little finger. Or I quite like the sound of this chord when played with a pick and 2 fingers technique. So I'd play the low E string with the pick, and then I'd use my middle finger and 3rd finger to pluck the 2 middle strings. And of course, again, this chord is a movable chord shape, so you can shift it up and down the neck like that. What we can also do is play this same idea across on the next string set with a 5th string root as well. So instead of playing our D 5th string root power chord in this conventional way, we could play it like this, the kind of Eric Johnson way. So playing the D note there at the 5th fret with my little finger, skipping the 4th string, playing the 2nd fret on the 3rd string with my first finger, 3rd fret on the 2nd string with my 2nd finger. And then why not just move over to the next set of strings as well, and instead of playing a 4th string root power chord like this, we would play it like this. So this is a G power chord I'm playing here. I've got the root note here at the 5th fret on the 4th string. I'm skipping and muting the 3rd string, and then I'm playing the 3rd fret on both the 2nd string and the 1st string with my first finger. So a nice G power chord. What you could also do with that shape is you could play a low G root note with your thumb as well, and that's a great sounding chord too. Well, I think that's about it for this lesson. I've covered every approach to playing power chords that I can think of right now. There may well be a few more. If you can think of any, let me know, and maybe I can do a part 3 to this lesson at some point in the future. I'm going to leave you by attempting to play the most dangerous and difficult power chord known to mankind. It's an E power chord played across all 6 strings. I'm going to play the open low E, then the 2nd fret on the 5th string, 2nd fret on the 4th string, 4th fret on the 3rd string, 5th fret on the 2nd string, and 7th fret on the 1st string. Here we go. Thank you very much. That's it for this lesson. I will see you for more lessons very soon, I hope. Bye bye.